Hey everybody, welcome to an emergency broadcast of the Jodo cast. Breaking news, we interrupt your whatever you were doing. We're not interrupting because by the nature of YouTube, you have chosen this. Anyways, we're just gonna do a quick little news slash discussion of the article that Atomic Mass Games released today. Um, Star Wars Legion Rules Update Preview Line of Sight. They put out an article with some information about a new rule book that will apparently be launching on January 16th, um, as well as some little tidbits of what they've done to change the line of sight rules in the game. One thing they note twice in all caps is that this is not an overhaul of the Legion rules you all know and love. Obviously, it's an adjustment, uh, in the lines of what the game has always been doing since it came out, where they're like, oh, you know what, let's tweak this a little bit. Let's change how this is worded.
Little
Um,
tweaks and clarifications,
right.
theoretically.
It's not like a change on the scale of what X-Wing has gone through twice with 1.0,
No.
2.0,
I would say
2.5.
so far as changes that have been made since Atomic Mass has taken over, um some of I think the changes that they made to, turn zero with some of the stuff with bidding and red and blue player and stuff probably have bigger impact than this. We'll see
Right.
though.
So they basically sort of say that the way the rulebook is and has been with the learn to play and the reference guide as separate documents, they don't dig that. They think it's bad for new players or hard to learn the game. Um, I don't know if I agree with that, but that's
I,
their
it seems sort of like a weird statement to me when you open up the Crisis Protocol core box and sitting right on top of your box when you first open it up is a learn to play guide.
my un there's no, evidence. My gut says they were sick of having somehow Fantasy Flight's old PDFs that they didn't seem very capable of editing well
Uh,
and wanted to start fresh with a brand new PDF that, they have all the
yeah. I,
if you make it from the start, it's going to be a lot easier for your team to update, I
well,
guess.
I will say the learn to play guide was fairly out of date by this
That
point,
too.
anyways.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, it
so
was pretty much irrelevant almost if you're trying to learn the game. Definitely, I think this will be better for new players. Depends
mhm.
on how it's laid out, but yeah, because like you said, the learn to play was kind of out of date. So
Yeah,
there will be a new.
I guess I wonder how they're gonna get the word out to new players. Like, is this new core book though? Is that gonna just be the thing that they're going to start boxing in, like core sets as new ones are manufactured, or what?
Yeah, who knows?
Yeah, I wonder.
That sounds pricey to be like, hold on, pause the production, switch this out for presumably because the rules reference guide was never printed. Only
No,
learn to play
no,
guide
but I
was
mean the
printed.
learn to play guide was, so it would just be a
Right.
matter of
I'm
you
saying
know
if they're now including the new book in printings, that's a lot more paper. But
Hmm.
so that'll be so basically it's all going to be condensed into one book and looks like um they've been like making rulings on the forums and stuff. So it sounds like they just want to put a new book out there where this is all the stuff from the forums is kind of incorporated into the rule book and it's all some of the wordings are more clear and things like that. And it looks like they're taking extra care to look at rules that maybe, especially new players, often get wrong,
hmm.
which there's an irony coming. But what they show is the changes they've made to the line of sight rule. Um, one of which I think is quite good. The rest of which remain to be seen. I'm not going to say that's going to be terrible or great, but one thing I do want to point out before we dive into these new changes is they do mention that, let's see, and I'm quoting from the article, previously, line of sight was drawn from the head of a miniature or a specific point on a vehicle, and players had to determine if miniatures had 50% of their silhouette obscured. This is not true. Cover has never worked like that in Legion. The only time you ever cared about whether 50% of a miniature was obscured is before you start playing to say, does this give cover to this specific guy? If it covers more than 50%, yeah, it gives him cover.
Yeah, and that was really mostly just a thing for vehicles, and it was a thing that was, supposed to be discussed, you know, at the start of the game, like, okay, this piece would give cover to my ATSD. This shorter piece over here doesn't. Um,
And
and and
yeah,
and they just said, there was really no 50% rule with that either. That was just like this is just a sort of guideline for you and your
Kind of a
opponent
rule
when
of
you're
thumb.
deciding um,
Yeah.
what should determine cover and what doesn't.
right. And they point out that now the rule is if you're looking at multiple minis, as long as half or more are obscured, they get cover, which is how it always has been, but
Yeah,
is also now how it is. Okay, getting that out of the way, I think it's interesting that and this is also a rule that I've encountered a lot of new players say, "Oh, it's 50% of it covered. Does it have cover?" That's not how it is.
yeah. I
So
mean, it
it
and
feels
and it was a problem when the game first came out. A lot of people were reading the cover rules wrong and doing the fifty
right.
percent thing. So
So they absolutely good for you for trying to reword these to make it people not have these newbie mistakes. But it's kind of weird that you also made this newbie mistake. At least whoever wrote the article.
yeah,
Maybe it was
True.
maybe because that we remember that happening with Fantasy Flight all the time. Whoever's writing the article oftentimes was not somebody who was very familiar with the game, or they were always getting things wrong. So I don't want to say, uh, it could have just been a misinterpretation of whoever was writing the
Yeah.
article.
Yeah.
Maybe they got some notes that were different. Um, Leo, read us the new line of sight rules.
all right.
We can briefly go through what's different
So
nowadays.
yeah, so line of sight is used to see if one mini can see another mini. We know that already. Player determines LOS from the perspective of their minis. That's done by creating a cylinder rising from the miniature's base called a silhouette. Um, Now you notice they're not talking about just troopers anymore. The only time we used to use cylinders and silhouettes was with small troopers. Um, or troopers on small bases. That's changed now.
Everybody gets a silhouette, sort
Every
of.
Yes, and then so miniature silhouette includes the miniature's base and the area above it up to the height of the silhouette. When determining line of sight between two miniatures, if an unobstructed straight imaginary line can be drawn from any part of one miniature's silhouette to any part of the other miniature's silhouette, those minis have line of sight to each other. So that's
That
another thing that's changed
right. You're no
is
longer looking from the head of your dude.
yep.
Just any
It's
which I like
yeah,
that.
it's any part of your
Your
cylinder,
silhouette.
and
Yeah,
it's
your
and
little
also
cylinder.
now line of sight is reciprocal. If I can see you, you can see me. That wasn't
Hmm.
always true.
Right. Which
Um,
I mean it makes sense that my little guy staying there, well, maybe I could look from a slightly shifted perspective because my man is capable of leaning his hips a little bit. I think
your
that's I
stormtrooper's
I
only
like that.
capable of standing like this.
Well, they
And
got their little line of sights now. They're capable of shifting anywhere within this cylinder of the diameter of their base.
Yeah.
and I think
Um,
that's not a super surprising change for Atomic Mass, who have really leaned into like we want to have really wild poses and stuff, and not have you feel penalized by the rules for that, right?
Yeah.
So
And so now this is actually a thing that we've kind of talked about before, and we've kind of thought it was weird that when Fantasy Flight added silhouettes for small bases that they didn't do any silhouettes for uh anything else. I'm mostly pro this change. So mostly there's some
the
weird stuff with this still.
yeah, they said
So the
base
small base troopers, you use the same silhouette we've been using ever since they were added back when Fantasy Flight did.
Technically, it is. This is now like hard coding silhouettes into the rules. Technically, right now, the word silhouette is not. It's only in the tournament document
That's
from
true.
Fantasy
That's true.
Flight.
Silhouettes were only like a
Not
tournament
actually part
thing.
of like the core rules, and now it is, which is good because it's weird that it's like a thing everybody uses and knows, but technically it's not in the rules reference guide, but it will be now.
Um, and now for so that's for the small base troopers. Troopers on notched bases, so you're like your creature troopers, emplacement troopers, um, like tauntauns and e-webs, etc. They have a silhouette that's, I don't know, maybe about half again as tall as
Yeah,
the
not quite twice as big, but
yeah,
almost.
yeah. It's actually someone did it. If you stack two short trooper
Mortars.
mortars on top of each other, it's exactly as tall as the notched base silhouette.
Right. Which is where we start scratching our heads because obviously a mortar is not replic. It's not the similar size of a
Yeah.
dewback or a F11D turret, the
Yeah.
dish turret. They're
There's
all
Right.
very different size, or a tauntaun,
A
but
Mark
there
they
II or an
all.
E-Web is just soldier sized,
yeah.
but now they're as tall as a
So
tauntaun.
now the
Well,
mortar can draw line of sight from twice its height, but maybe the turret can't get its entire height for line of sight.
yeah.
It seems like there should have been a some, I don't know. It's weird, especially with the mortars. Like, oh, I can see like my man is like jumping twice his height to get a peek or
Yeah.
something. I don't.
Yeah, like the mortars and stuff. I mean, it's nice because they can more easily now shoot over walls and things like that, which was a
Hmm.
thing they didn't
Kind
used
of
to
makes
be able to
sense.
do. But now they can also be targeted over those same walls much easier.
It's
A thing to
also
note, if you're reading the article on the Atomic Mass site, is the notched base trooper silhouette is rotated 90 degrees in their article for some reason. I don't know why
yeah.
they didn't put it in there, um, the way it's supposed to be, but it confused a lot of people. There's also, I've seen a lot of people who are thinking that this one rectangle is the entirety of the silhouette. Um, but no, it's not. Just that's really just to determine height, and then the width of your cylinder is however big your base
Hmm.
is.
I
So
guess I was wondering that too. They didn't really call it out
Because with the
for the
small
different base
base,
size.
because the small base silhouette is the same width as the base. But for this, you're saying we only care about that's for height. It's not that a dewback is now harder to see because the silhouette provided
yeah,
is not as wide. Okay, that makes. See, I was confused about that too.
yeah,
I think
yeah,
they could have explained that better because I mean they're talking about notched
It,
bases all being the same silhouette, and they kind of are, but they also kind of different because the bases are all different. So
they did already update this with clarifications because people were confused about things, but which is good that they were responsive. A little weird that they didn't foresee some of these questions that everyone immediately had.
So
uh,
just to repeat again, the notched base silhouette is the same height no matter your notched base size, and then you will kind of slide it side to side for the width of your base to kind of
yeah, yeah. I
line
mean,
it up.
I guess the thing to think is so if it's flexible like this, like if you printed out a paper or whatever, then you can just put it like bend it up against the base, and then go back to whatever mini is supposed to be looking at it and see if he can see that height in there or whatever, and you can move it around the base however you want. Um,
I would.
the only thing I think that's gonna suck with this is now like most trooper units, just regular trooper units, with the exception of things like the astromech droids, and pretty much fit inside their silhouette cylinder. already.
Yeah, well,
So you don't.
people on
So
flight stands.
yeah, yeah. I mean, there's the flight stands and stuff, but at the end of the day, so you don't end up using the small base silhouette a ton, but just because, like, especially like we said with the E-Web and the mortar, the height difference between the actual mini and the silhouette is so huge. um I think you're gonna end up pulling this guy out and having to use it for reference fairly frequently.
Yeah,
Yeah.
probably the big one a lot more. The little one, maybe slightly more than you do nowadays, but I feel like more often than not,
Usually
you'll be
obvious.
able to just go, yeah, it's pretty clear how this is, unless there's a lot of junk in the way
Yeah.
or something.
Yeah, I
Um,
feel like I need to actually print one out and see what it looks like compared to a bunch of different notched base sizes because it's like right now I can't tell. Is it shorter than an Atgar? It's obviously way taller than like a Mark II, but yeah, you won't
Yeah,
be able to eyeball those as
I
easily.
believe people have said it's like it does cut, so like a little bit of the top of the dish of an Atgar does get
Mhm.
cut off. Um,
Hmm.
um,
um,
but I haven't
the
checked those
Adgar,
out.
the turret from Hoth, that's not in this game. Or am I wrong? I thought that
Huh?
was the white one. Like this.
No,
Anyway, doesn't matter.
that's like a
Oh,
gold
that's
one
a
or
golden
something.
Yeah.
turret.
Come
Um,
on,
but
fake
the other
Jeez,
fan.
thing
don't you
with
know your
silhouettes.
Star Wars
Ugh.
artillery? You should have played the CCG more.
Speaking of artillery, vehicles now have a silhouette. So they said this is something they changed because they thought the way vehicle line of sight currently worked made some weird experiences. Because basically every vehicle in the game had a specific point on the miniature that was designated in the reference guide saying, draw a line of sight from here. It says vehicles now have a silhouette from their base to the top of their hull that does not include parts like weapons, antenna, or crew members. This ensures players no longer have to worry about their spider droid's antenna, making it impossible for them to remain hidden, and
Okay, those
eliminates
all break off anyways. So
the silliness of being able to adjust a vehicle's silhouette by moving its turret or positioning its weapons in a specific way. Although I would argue you could still adjust your ATST very high or very low. That's
same
the
with
one
Yeah.
vehicle
I
that,
mean, and same thing with the ATRTs. People have,
yeah,
adjusted
um,
how
most
tall.
of the rest of them should be pretty
Yeah,
standardized.
but it does make for some, um, you
There's
know,
two weird edge cases here. Well, one maybe not so much of an edge case.
like
The first one, if you're ignoring crew, look at a bark speeder or a imperial speeder bike.
bark is less just because they're sort of
Oh
like
yeah,
sitting
he's
Reclined.
down in
speeder
it.
Yeah.
bike though.
But the speeder bike or the swoop,
If you're ignoring the crew on those, or the swoop bikes, there goes
and their cylinder is only as wide as their base. There's like it's like almost like half of the physical mini isn't a legal target.
right. And now, yeah, so
um
it's harder for you to see, but also incredibly easy for you to hide your bikes with. If I would be surprised if they don't clarify, except for the bikes.
well,
Uh-huh.
But
or just in general,
Yeah.
I feel like there's in the full rules there might be some
there better
clarifications
be,
about
yeah,
stuff on flight stands
absolutely.
because otherwise the air speeder has an enormous cylinder. Same with like the lat and stuff. They're gonna
Yeah, and there have been, none of it's addressed in here, but the existing rules have special rules for vehicles with flight stands, saying, well, you don't care about their base or what's below. So hopefully there's still something similar.
Yeah,
yeah.
maybe we'll still get that because
The
I'm
other
immediately
thing
thinking about
that
the Fluttercraft. It's like a really weird. Does the thing on top count as the hole? About and the like the little wings. Is that the hole? I don't know. It's
the
weird.
other thing about this vehicle thing that's interesting to me is, let's say you've got your speeder truck or something parked behind a giant wall, but its butt is sticking out just barely. If I'm understanding this right, there's no longer like a fixed point on the mini where you have to draw a line of sight from. It's like the troopers, anywhere from my silhouette to your silhouette. So as long as a tiny chunk of this vehicle is sticking out, I can see stuff. Basically, it's got eyeballs everywhere.
Well, sort
and
of. I mean, because its butt actually does stick out beyond its base, so you would have to have
Oh,
part of its
sure.
base
But
out
I
yeah,
around
mean
a
the cylinder
corner.
is going to be really wide on like an AAT, right? The top is like very narrow, but it's going to be this whole wide cylinder um, that you're going to have to
a lot of them,
kind of
it
rule around.
won't
I don't know.
end up being as silly as I'm describing because most vehicles have fixed front weapons. So even if you can like peek
Hmm.
apart around the corner, you it's not going
Yeah,
to work for the
but like
car.
that, like you said, like the bus has
The turret.
turret.
Yeah. So if there's a wall covering all of it except enough of the back is hanging out, even if like, I don't know. It
Yeah.
looks like the intent is to simplify a lot of this and make it a little bit less fiddly, which maybe at the expense of some of the thematic or getting your head around, well, how can that laser turret shoot me? It's behind a building, but
Which
maybe
is
I'll,
true occasionally of the current rules too. So
Yeah.
it's kind of
for
like
sure.
swapping some cases for others, and I don't know.
Um,
Yeah, and so now it does say though you should be discussing vehicle silhouettes before the game begins. So I guess so they're getting rid of the step where you try and talk about which things give cover to which vehicles, and now you just talk about silhouettes instead. So they replaced the step with just a different step that
the
at the end of the day is going to do almost the same thing.
as far as troopers shooting at troopers, um, it's the same as before, where you see if half or more are obscured by cover to see if they have cover. Um, However, there does not appear to be the step where you can see if there's like a center line to center line. Basically, if a part of a mini silhouette is obscured, it's obscured. Whereas before, if a part was obscured, you would then see, well, can I draw a line between these guys? And if it doesn't go through it, it's not obscured. If like the corner of your silhouette is being obscured, you got it.
I
Which
mean,
may,
it's not super clear to me, honestly. I feel like we just don't have the full new cover rules. There could be like a different section that we'll talk about. Maybe they're keeping the center line,
well,
or
let
maybe
me
they're keeping
read
some
the.
other thing. Because they really only talk about half of the squad being obscured, and they don't really say, well, what does count as obscured? How much of your silhouette counts? Is it center line? I
Oh,
think they don't
doesn't
really
it
go
say
into
that?
that, do
It says,
they?
Yeah, it's step
if line of
the
sight to
step
any
right
part
above
of
it says
yeah,
tells you how
if
to do obscured,
if
determine
line of
what's
sight to
obscured.
any part of the defending miniature silhouette is blocked by terrain, other than terrain in base contact with the attacking unit, if any part of their silhouette is obscured by terrain that the attacker's not touching, that's it.
And a
So
part
if there was like
From
a,
any angle, or only from the angle you're looking at?
what do you mean? That would be silly. You got to
Because
like from the
you're
angle of the shooter. You're
no,
not
but
gonna
I mean,
like
because you're starting point to point from your cylinder anywhere on the cylinder to anywhere on their cylinder, right? Is that the only line you're
oh,
checking, or are you saying as long as something's obscured somewhere, some pixel, is
I would
that
assume
counts
you
as
don't have
obscured?
to like pick an XYZ coordinate in your own cylinder and stick with that.
yeah.
The attacking player checks line of sight from any part of the attacking leader's silhouette
Yeah.
to each miniature in the defending unit. Line of sight to any part of the defending miniature silhouette is blocked by terrain. Blah blah blah.
It's
And the part
exactly
of the
like
silhouette
it
is
was
invisible.
before, with the exception of now you no longer check to see if there's a center line to center line between these minis. It's just if it's obscured, it's obscured.
Any pixel, basically.
Right.
Yep.
It's yeah, so which absolutely simplifies things, but you will now also have situations where that guy's foot is covered up by a corner
Right.
and that's enough to give him heavy cover.
Yeah. Yeah. So you'll have cover a lot more often in a lot
Yes,
of scenarios, basically.
I think so.
But it is a lot faster to determine because you can just immediately
Absolutely.
see.
You never gotta have to bust out that laser line again, which happens a lot. We're like, I can see the laser. Could you? You got a laser? Can I borrow that?" That's never doesn't have to happen anymore.
I mean, you still might have to be like, okay, well, I don't
Mostly
know.
for like fixed front type things, right? Those angles. But yeah,
Yeah.
for like normal cover, it'll be pretty easy to eyeball, other than cases where you're like, okay, I can't tell the cylinder. Can you hold the thing up for me? That's going to be the main thing, right? It Right, because the cover will, as long as the cover obscures any part of the cylinder, right? So there's going to be parts where it's not blocking the mini at all, and you have to double check that. Like, are you
I
sure
would
it's not
like
covering the cylinder?
a cylinder that's the silhouette size that has like the brightest LED in it, so I can swap out my attacking mini, put it there, and then just see where the shadows fall.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think the only other change they mention here, I'm sure there's others, and I'm sure there will be lots of clarifications and stuff, as much as they're trying to like standardize and have much less edge cases that require their own clarifications. I'm sure there will be some clarifications
Yeah,
that
because like there's
that we
not
don't know
really
yet.
like there's not really any talk about how cover's going to be working for vehicles,
Yeah, we
and I'm sure
obviously
there's some adjustments to that too.
we don't
Yeah.
have all the information right now, and we won't until January 16th. But this is just what they've given us right now. So the last thing they talk about is how wounds are suffered, and this feels to me like a direct attack, not attack. I don't mind this.
But direct
Although
response.
a direct, yeah, fix almost to what you would call heavy sniping or terrain sniping, or the way strike teams take advantage of line of sight. Basically, this says um,
Or playing the game with skill.
uh, if when you take damage, so current rules is only minis that are visible to the attacker are eligible to take wounds.
Yeah, so
New
people would
rules,
would sometimes use that to their advantage
right? So,
with
I'm
with
gonna
what we
move.
with what we
Yeah,
call terrain sniping. So you position your guy so you can only see the opposing player's DLT mini. So that way, when you do your damage, they have to kill off their DLT because that's the
right.
only one you can see.
Now the rules are they suffer wounds if there's guys who are totally hidden. That still helps you because you can only suffer. So if I rolled 10 damage, but I can only see 2 of your minis, you can only suffer a maximum of 2 damage.
Assuming they're one
But
hit point minis.
yeah, now you're only allowed, or you can now assign that damage anywhere in the unit you like, even if it was somebody the attacker could not have seen. So if your unit leader is sticking out, everyone else is hidden, someone shoots at that unit leader, the guy around the corner can drop dead, and that's fine. And that's it definitely simplifies a lot of like line of sight stuff. Like, oh, I can see him. He's the only guy I can see. I'm gonna shoot, take this much damage. I don't know if this I don't hate it. I don't love it. It does feel like it was working against the uh, terrain sniping and things like that, but
Which
it
is
does
always
make
a
for
thing that
some.
hurts when it happens to you. It's like annoying.
Yeah, I think it's usually annoying.
But
Um, I
I guess I always saw it as, yeah, maybe a little bit annoying, but it's also one of like those, I don't know, it was like one of those high skill level moves that help differentiate.
was start. Yeah, I wouldn't disagree, but it's also a move where your opponent sits there for like 10 minutes with his stick pushing and going. Can you see him now? Can you see him now? Can you see him now? Okay, okay, we'll stop there and now we'll shoot. And it's like really slowed the game down and just felt really gamey. Not that this still feels weird because now the guy hiding behind the thing can get like shot with a boomerang laser. Still strange, but it does take away some of like that. I don't know. In my opinion, terrain sniping was never something that felt
It
great to me. It always felt
also
like a
it also lets you use line of sight to um basically become like armor damage reduction for your units. Like
yeah.
if like say you got an objective, you have to, which one, what is it?
Let's say key positions or intercept the
Yeah, where
transmissions, where
you
you
just have
have
to
to
be like
be
within range one.
or touching it or
Yeah,
something.
or
And
it's or
especially when the
like
token
yeah,
has to be on terrain anyways, so you know you're in
you
a line
you
of
put
sight scenario
Well,
yourself
probably.
in
let's
cover,
say
except
yeah,
for one guy,
your unit
and it's gonna
leader
take
is
them.
the only buddy who's in range one. Everyone else is beyond range one of this token. So the only one mini is in the, but it's your unit leader. He's the guy who's on the objective. Everyone else is too far away, but everyone else is hidden to the enemy. Okay, that's the situation on the field here.
Yeah, so now they can only do 1 damage to your unit at a time. So it's going to take, depending on, like, if it's a unit of big B1s, it could take them, 8 shots
Right.
to
Be-
kill off 8
before
attacks to get that
before you get that
mini
one
off
damage,
the
yeah.
objective.
Before to one hit, that unit leader who stuck his ass out there, he's dead, and now there's someone else in the unit as the unit leader. Now any of those guys who are hiding back there can take that damage, and so it's going to be immensely harder to move somebody who's dug in like that.
Now, I don't think at least I don't think it'll come up a ton, but when it does happen, it's going to be really annoying because you're like, well, I can only do 1 damage per attack. This is pointless, right?
Yeah,
If you
I
can't
mean,
get out far enough to the side to see more people or something.
right. And I think the game as it currently exists has a bunch of weird little edge cases that are usually almost always fine, but sometimes frustrating. And it seems like this will be about the same, where it's almost always going
Kind
to
of
be
trading.
very simple, straightforward. I think it's going to be a lot easier to do line of sight now. And only sometimes will you be like, well, that seems a little weird. That doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
But it's probably going to be the same frequency as it is now. Just maybe some people might feel it's less skillful or somehow weird, and could be. I think it's going to be trading some weirdness for other weirdness
I think
and
so.
with the
I
benefit
think
of
so.
being a little bit more straightforward everywhere else.
And there's always the chance that, some of these changes, there's still going to be 3 more rules articles coming out, one here on Wednesday, the next Monday, and next Wednesday, all leading up to the release of the full new rule book. So, maybe once we see all the changes they're putting together, it all kind of
Right.
meshes.
Yeah,
But
because we have but the tip of the iceberg here.
Right.
So things could really come together and we go, this is amazing. Or things could be like, whoa there. But like they said, they're not like, this isn't X-Wing or Legion 1.5 or 2.0. It's just, this isn't any more drastic than any changes that have happened to the game before. And I don't expect any of the other ones to be like major changes. They're all just small tweaks that are intended to make life a little easier for players and easier for new people to learn, which seems fine to me.
Yeah, and I think the truth is like any rule in a war game like this, you're always trying to balance like the abstraction level versus the like realistic simulation level, and it's always going one way more than the other. And I think in this case they've simplified it a little more, and that makes it a little more abstract, like with the guys hiding that you can't see but they still die or whatever. It's like, well, that wouldn't happen in real life, but also, it's a game and we have to keep it
I
moving
mean,
It's
kind of
almost,
fast. So,
it's
with the exception of the times when it's like a unique guy, like say Echo peeking out around the corner,
mhm.
you could sort of abstract it as it is
Someone
actually
else is the
it
leader
is
jumping up.
actually that mini that was standing out who dies, but then one of the guys around the corner is all like, "Well, I'm gonna pick up his sniper rifle now," and
Right. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
and
The
he
only
steps
issue
out.
with
So
that is I name every single one of my individual minis, and I know their backstories,
and
so that doesn't work with me.
whenever any of them die in a game, he throws them in the garbage and paints up a new one.
I write a little eulogy and I like draft it in my emails to their widow, and then
Then he
in
buries
case I
them in
might,
his backyard. He's got all kinds of little tiny,
Little
one
coffins and
48th
headstones.
scale gravestones in his
Yeah.
backyard.
yeah. But in the minis in a unit have always more or less been representational of that unit's hit points, so it's, I don't know, it's fine. It'll take a bit of like getting my brain used to it because I like thinking of things thematically. But like you said, it's easy enough to say, "Oh, that guy just ran out and he's the one who fell over," or whatever, or
Yeah.
someone else took up the position after that guy died. Like, "Oh, that guy died. Let me go take his spot." Stand right there.
Uh-huh.
Um, but yeah, my takeaway is a little concerning that they had the original rules wrong. I don't know if, like I said, it's quite likely just an issue with whoever was writing the article. But overall,
Yeah, but at the same time, like I said, it's a mistake I've seen lots of new players make. So if they did that, and it's not like they have any former Legion devs on left on their team, so there was no one around to correct them. So it's very well could be that they'd been
yeah,
understanding it wrong.
yeah, which is strange. But the silhouette for the notch bases, gonna have to see how that goes. But overall, I think it looks fine. It looks uh I'm kind of excited to try it out and just see how different it feels. If it makes the game go faster or slower, I don't know. But overall, I think fine, and curious to learn more about what other changes are coming. And
Yeah.
I'm not concerned or thinking this is going to ruin the game or ruin my experience or my fun. I think it'll be fine.
Don't worry, we'll be here on Wednesday to tell you how the game is ruined.
Yeah, yeah. We do you guys have any closing thoughts?
No, I think we covered it.
Okay, well,
Yeah, yeah.
thanks for watching. Tell us what you think about the new line of sight rules and the impending new rule book. Um, and we'll see you on Wednesday for the next article.